Hey everybody, it is State Senator Mallory McMorrow. Happy almost Halloween and happy Friday. Welcome to another edition of This Week with Mallory. Got some spooky surprises and some stuff to get into this week, so let's go ahead and get into it. All right, first up this week, we want to jump into some news that we're actually seeing play out on the national level and also right here in Michigan. So we have seen over the past month a lot of strikes. A lot of unions are going on strike. Workers are going on strike. This is hitting a lot of industries. We've seen it in the entertainment industry and right here at home. Hashtag Striketober is marching on, and Kellogg's workers over in Battle Creek are on strike here in Michigan and at facilities around the country. There is a discrepancy between where the company and workers are. So, as we all know, when all of us were at home and trying to stay safe at the beginning of the pandemic, when we didn't know about this virus, we had our food workers were still at work and doing all the work and coming into work every day to make sure that we could place our orders, that we could get groceries delivered at home, that we could go to Kroger. And Kellogg's actually saw record sales and record profits throughout 2020 and into 2021. So part of this is about the pandemic, but part of this is something bigger. So the workers' contracts with Kellogg's expired, and where the discrepancies are is in Kellogg's wanting to facilitate kind of this two-tiered system for workers who have been with the company for a long time versus workers who may be coming in with different pay, different benefits. That's something that the workers are asking for that to be leveled out, for there to kind of be one playing field for workers, improved benefits, improved holiday pay, and paid leave and time off, and just improved wages. So the head of Kellogg's, and we're seeing this a trend around the country as well. His salary went up, the CEO's salary, and the workers, especially if we are recognizing them as essential, should be treated as essential because they are. You know, food production is essential to all of our daily lives, and the workers should be compensated fairly, as we're kind of talking about income disparity and seeing that come to a head all around the country as we are facing a worker shortage. There is a moment now where workers are really kind of flexing their muscle and asking and demanding for the playing field to be leveled a little bit. So this week, a number of my colleagues in the Senate Democratic Caucus went out to Battle Creek to join Kellogg's workers, and I shared this out. So we are standing behind them and encourage Kellogg's to come to the table and make sure that we are treating workers fairly. And we will see that across many industries. I think this is a really unique moment where workers now have leverage and are hoping to close that gap between income disparity and treatment. And we stand with them and will continue to support in any way that we need. Moving on some national news, and I've got Liz behind the scenes running our slideshow today. So we are testing out new tech. So Build Back Better. So we have heard from a lot of people, and you may have heard me on NPR and elsewhere kind of talking about this. So we are hopefully very, very, very close to the Build Back Better Act being passed in Congress. And this can get really wonky. People were asking about reconciliation and what's in the infrastructure package and what is in this package. So I really like to talk about what is in policy and what it actually means for our residents. This is something that, if it does get across the line, I mean, this is huge, thinking about all of these things going into effect and talking about income inequality, leveling the playing field, and making some really significant investments in places that we need it. So this graphic, I think, is really helpful. The Build Back Better framework was released yesterday. This is part of an ongoing negotiation among Democrats. So on the federal level, this is really a negotiation among one party. So far, there has been nobody from the other side of the aisle that supports this package. And I think that is an indication of a larger issue right now with politics in our country. But Democrats have a very, very, very small minority in Congress. So we want to talk about what is in this when it does get across the line. So in the Build Back Better Act is an expanded monthly child tax credit, which would be a historic cut in child poverty, the biggest investment ever to combat climate change. And this is something that I have been talking about a lot. And for Michigan, this is a huge investment. There is a significant investment in clean energy, new jobs, the shift to EVs and charging infrastructure, as well as incentives for more consumers to be able to access, this new technology and supporting our signature industry. And there was some really good research done that if and when this passes, these investments will save the average Michigan resident $500 a year on energy costs. And that is just one kind of piece of how it's going to hit home for a lot of us. We have seen this year power outages after power outages. We see kind of the fracturing of our grid, not being able to withstand increased extreme weather events. We saw many storms throughout the summer that led to frequent outages. But also I'm hearing from constituents who are having outages on a nice sunny 72-degree day, which makes it even more frustrating when there is an extreme weather event and you have an extended outage, kind of grappling with why is it out on a nice day? I kind of understand when there are trees down all around my community, but this is something huge where I think this is going to help jumpstart our shift to clean energy and also make our grid more resilient. So these are conversations that I'm having that are ongoing and something that I'm really excited about. Universal pre-K is in the Build Back Better Act. So that is a commitment. We made a commitment as a country that every child is guaranteed a K through 12 education. This adds 2 years onto that. We know, and talking with superintendents and our school administrators, that it is obvious which kids are coming into the school system with access to early childhood, preschool, early childhood education who get a leg up. And that's going to be huge for not only for kids to be able to have that education start early, but also for parents. As we look at the past year and the number of people who have left the workforce, right now we have more jobs in Michigan open than we have people to fill them. A lot of that comes down to caretaking. There are parents who say, I cannot and will not go back to work until I've got a care situation figured out. So early childhood education is a part of that. But certainly not everything, which is why there's historic childcare investments, home care. This is something that I kind of see critiques of, why are we focusing on just the parents aspect of caretaking when we know so many people are caring for a relative, a parent, a sibling. And that is very much true here in Oakland County in our district. So there are investments there as well. You can see the list goes on and how we pay for it. Leveling the playing field on everybody paying their fair share. Elon Musk, I know, was critical this week of the quote billionaires tax. And for the record, somebody like him, he paid $0 in federal taxes last year. And he was really critical of this. But what I think is important is the American taxpayer, so that's all of us, have invested billions of dollars into all of his companies through kind of the subsidies and the grants that have gotten Tesla off the ground. And I think, Tesla is a great example of pushing the entire industry forward towards electrification, SpaceX and others. So, this is the kind of give and take of being in our country that, yes, we invest in, and now it's time to see the returns. And I think that is fundamentally fair. So we will talk more about this. I think to understand where this is right now, it has not passed yet. So it needs to go. There's the debate right now about the bipartisan infrastructure package along with Build Back Better. In both the House and the Senate, most Democrats want them to move together as a package. We are hoping for both of these because these are significant investments for Michigan, for our district, and we will keep everybody posted. on that. All right, moving into updates from the Capitol. You may have seen on Twitter, if you follow me at all, but there was a bill up this past week, a package of bills that would create so-called Michigan Student Opportunity Scholarships, which on their face sounds like a great thing. This would be a program that would create a fund that anybody can donate money into to create scholarships that low-income children, students could use to go to private or parochial schools. Uh, the challenge with this it is a tax credit program. So it would really allow a vehicle for wealthy individuals to funnel money through this program, put it into this scholarship fund, and receive a one-for-one tax credit. So lowering the total amount of money that they owe taxes on. And the Senate Fiscal Agency, which is a nonpartisan agency that reviews bills that come before us, pointed out that this would result in a $1 billion, with a B, cut to our public education system over the next 5 years. That's a huge hit. And fundamentally, in our district, I consider myself very lucky, and I know all of us who live here do. We have excellent public schools, we have excellent private schools, and they both have their place. And I am somebody, I went through public K-12, and then I went to a private school for college, and I know a lot of people are a mix of that. But fundamentally, our state constitution guarantees every child the right to a public education, and that public dollars must only be used for public education. If you want to pursue another option, or if you want to support a private school, you can absolutely do that. And you should, if that's what's right for you. But that should not be funded with public dollars. There is nothing right now that would stop somebody if you do want to create a scholarship, let's say within a private school. You could set that up. You could donate money directly to the private school. And oftentimes, because private schools are nonprofits, that would come with a tax deduction. So that's great. People should absolutely do that. But it is the one-for-one tax credit where, that kind of was the red flag for me that says this is no longer about supporting students and giving students the option of achieving a scholarship to go to a private school. This is really just a way to funnel money and get out of paying taxes that would devastate our public school system. So I voted no on this. I would expect the governor will veto this when it gets to her desk. And we know this is something that this has been challenged time and time again in Michigan, and residents overwhelmingly reject the idea that public dollars should go to private schools. And like I said, they have their place, but they need to be supported, and we cannot keep chipping away at our public schools. Next up, tampon tax. This is something I have been working on for 3 years. My colleague, Senator Winnie Brinks, seen here, has been working on this for, I believe, 8 years since her time in the House. And it's very simple. Right now in the state of Michigan, menstrual hygiene products are part of things that are taxed. So you pay a 6% sales tax on any tampon, pad, menstrual cup, which, this is a tax that half of our population, slightly more than half actually, will pay throughout their lifetime, that the other half does not. And it may seem very, very small, buying a box of tampons and paying 6% tax on a $7 to $10 box of tampons. But, to think about this on a personal level, I remember, in one of my first jobs making minimum wage, the first time I had to buy a box of tampons while I was at work, and just realizing I had to work an entire hour just to be able to buy a box of tampons. My brother worked at the same grocery store that I did, and he did not have that. So he could take his wages for that dollar of work and, go buy a sandwich or snacks, and I had to buy tampons. So that is just something that adds up away at girls' and women's wealth throughout their lifetimes. And the average woman is going to use 17,000 tampons throughout her lifetime. It adds up. This is something that in 14 other states in the District of Columbia have already eliminated this tax because of that tax fairness issue. So we had bipartisan support finally this term where these bills moved. And I think on that issue of tax fairness, that is where there is alignment between the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and these moved through both the House and the Senate. And bills will be headed to the governor's desk for her signature to pass into law. Somebody asked me on Twitter, how could you possibly work on this for 3 years? It's such a simple issue. And I think that's a great example of something that I've learned in this job, which is patience and persistence. And sometimes even things that are very, very simple do take time to build the support, to connect with people who may not necessarily agree that this is where we should go. And these bills in the Senate passed overwhelmingly on a bipartisan basis. I think there were 2 no votes out of 38 when they came up. So great news. All right, last up, we want to talk about short-term rentals. We are starting to hear from you, getting emails, phone calls about this bill. This is House Bill 4722, and it was pushed through the state house this past week. Our poor colleagues in the House were in session until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on this bill that would really kind of override local control. And if you're asking yourself, what is a short-term rental? So this is like an Airbnb, VRBO, kind of vacation rental. And there's a debate, and I think a healthy one, about how many short-term rentals there should be. How do we kind of butt up of property owner rights? If I own a house and I want to rent it out or list it on a platform, that should be my right to do that. But what happens if you live in a community where a significant number of houses are being purchased by people who are using them as rentals and not necessarily living there? This is an issue in some of our vacation destination cities versus here locally. There have been issues with short-term rentals. There were a story a couple of years ago of a house that, as much as I love Royal Oak, I live here, there aren't that many people who vacation in Royal Oak. So there was a short-term rental that was being used as a party house, drug running house, and just, a real challenge to the community and to neighbors and to public safety. And what is the recourse for a municipality if that is the case? So this bill, we have received a lot of outreach of people asking us to oppose this legislation. Fundamentally, nothing good happens when the strategy is just to keep everybody as long as possible overnight and exhaust them until you get enough people to vote for something. That's just not a good way to make policy in my book. So this will be coming to the Senate at some point. We know it's going to need work because our local communities need to be able to have some control over this so it doesn't get out of hand. So, we've got to find that balance between property rights. I use Airbnb. I like it. It's a great way if you kind of want to be someplace that's unique, and balancing, what does this do to the hotel industry or people who do work in hospitality, who are house cleaners, who are seeing that chip away. So more to come, but we are hearing your emails. We will keep you posted as this bill moves over to the Senate, and there is going to have to be some work done in our chamber, I think, to get the support that it would need to feel like a real compromise that actually gives everybody a piece of that. So more to come. All right. Our favorite time of coffee hour is good news. And as you may tell, I am not normally dressed like Captain Marvel, but this is our Halloween edition. I actually, was looking back at pictures from last year, and I think I actually posed in this hoodie, but I was extremely pregnant, or pretty pregnant at the time. So Noah is now out a year later. This is her first Halloween. We got her costume, oh my gosh, a month after she was born. Maybe she's going to be the Stay Puffed Marshmallow from Ghostbusters, and mom and dad are going to be Ghostbusters, and hopefully it's not raining and we can take her out into the community. But we wanted to share some of the Halloween events that are going on in the community. And I know Liz is going to drop a link if you're on Facebook for a more comprehensive list, because there's a lot going on to take advantage of. Troy Historic Village trick-or-treating event, where you can dive into the ocean this Halloween at the Troy Historic Village. Join us for the Village Sea for a swimmingly good time. I think you can pick up on the theme here. Enjoy fun games, crafts, and of course, sea-worthy trick-or-treating. The event will be held rain or shine. So listen, we are Michiganders. We know how to handle tricky weather. So put that costume on, bring a rain jacket, bring an umbrella, layer up if you need to. And it will be held 4 to 8 p.m. on Friday, October 29th. That's today. And noon to 3 on Saturday, October 30th at the Troy Historic Village. Our next event that we've got for Halloween is Bookley Nights and downtown Berkeley trick-or-treating. This has been going on, I believe, throughout the entire month of October. So Berkeley is doing a ton of fun stuff to get people out and downtown, especially after last year we had to support our small businesses and restaurants. So the trick-or-treat stroll is going to be October 30th from 12 to 3. Where you can go trick-or-treating at participating downtown businesses. And then the Monster Mash will be tomorrow, October 30th from 2 to 6 p.m., which will feature a live DJ, Halloween crafts and activities, plenty of photo opportunities. So make sure that costume is on point and ready to go, and something suitable for all ages. The outdoor celebration will take place at Coolidge and Dorothy Road. So check it out. Go check out all of Bookley Nights to learn more. And then last, but certainly not least, on the events that we are talking about during coffee hour, Clawson Trick or Treasure 2021. Downtown Clawson will become a safe zone for all of the kids. Kids in costume can travel through the downtown businesses, collecting treasures, and this is cool, allergy-free treats. So I know this is really hard. Some of my friends, I had a friend growing up who I loved, but allergic to everything. And we always felt so bad when it was Halloween because it was really hard to participate. So this is awesome that Clawson is doing it. Huge shout out to Clawson for making this accessible to more kids with allergy-free treats and maybe a few tricks along the way. That's going to be Saturday, October 30th, tomorrow from noon to 2 p.m. And with that, I'm going to bring on, this is not Liz. Can you introduce yourself to the
You can't see, but it's a Rockford Peach. I find myself more to be a Dottie than a Kit, but yeah. Sometimes there is crying in baseball, okay?
There's
Emotions.
no crying in baseball, and there's no crying in Friday coffee hours either.
Yeah, no, there's none of that.
All right, what questions do we have this week? Now, just a reminder, in case anybody is tuning in for the first time, this is live. So this is your opportunity to ask live questions. So if you do have a question, make sure you type your name if that is not immediately evident in your username, because we are live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Put the city that you live in and fire away with your question, and we will try to get to as many as we can. So what do we got?
We have a couple of questions from our submit your question form, which I know was disabled, or the link was broken on a couple of our posts, but we fixed that now. So we got a few of them. The first one is Paul from Berkeley via our submit your question form. How will Public Act 51 be changed to ensure a more equitable road funding distribution?
That is such an important question. And if we had it figured out by now, we would be in a much better place. So PA 51, this is the road funding public act that has been in place for decades now. And, this was something the governor got into office running on fix the damn roads. This is an issue that affects everybody. And particularly here in Oakland County, we kind of noticed that there was a shift between some of the southern parts of the county where a lot of our roads were in really bad shape versus kind of traveling north. And I've noticed this traveling north in our district, that it's a change. And then you drive up north and, there might not be as much traffic, but I love me a good road trip up north and driving a tunnel of trees. The roads are in great condition and freshly paved. So it is something that needs to be, I think, completely overhauled. That has not happened yet. But an interesting kind of nugget to add to it as we're talking about Build Back Better, the shift to EVs, is a lot of our road funding currently is based on the gas tax. And, that was a conversation a couple of years ago on changing the gas tax to increase revenue. And that has fallen apart a number of times. But if you think about the shift to electric vehicles, I drive a Chevy Bolt most days. I don't go to a gas station. I plug my car in when I get home. I drive to Lansing. I come back. So what does that mean? Right now, EVs drivers pay a flat fee every year on their registration. So my registration is an additional $250 when I renew my registration, which is a big hit at once. And I know for EV drivers or people thinking about it, that has been a complaint. But really, if we are transitioning to electric vehicles, and we've seen Ford, GM, Stellantis, and automakers even outside of Michigan committing to, by 2030, that most, if not all, of the new vehicles sold will be EVs with significant investment. So we're going to have to completely redo Act 51 to figure out how we are paying for and maintaining our infrastructure without the gas tax. There is a House work group that formed earlier this year that is focused specifically on this issue. So it was an EV work group that formed, but it really is about road funding. As we make this transition, how are we ensuring that we collect enough revenue that we can maintain our infrastructure? But also, I think a huge piece of that is how is it distributed more fairly, where we are actually sending the money to the roads based on usage versus mile. Right now, Act 51 is based on mile length of road, but that doesn't take into consideration, if there's 2, 3, 4 lanes, for example, and just the volume of usage of that road. So more to come. I wish we had a better answer, but there's a lot changing coming up. And I hope that there's bipartisan conversation in the legislature now about really digging into that, tearing it apart, because we're going to have to, as more electric vehicles hit the road.
He had a second part of that question and that is what's being done to address the serious flooding issues in Metro Detroit?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. One of the most heartbreaking things right now is hearing from residents who have just straight up anxiety when it rains now, that they see the weather report, they know rain is coming, and they're panicked because of the flooding on the roads, flooding in basements. People have already lost everything multiple times. So my colleagues and I in the Democratic caucus in the Senate, a number of us have been working on a climate resiliency package throughout the entire summer. Right now, it's around a $5 billion package that would do a number of things. So a bill that I am working on would require that we plan our infrastructure differently. When you think about multi-lane highways, we saw the flooding over the summer in Detroit with just cars just sunk in the water and abandoned and left there. And I think what's clear is we can't build our infrastructure the same way that we used to, because we're in a new reality now. There are significantly more rain events. And when they are, it's heavy rain. It's heavy and it's fast and it floods. So our bill would require more consideration of green infrastructure alternatives and not just kind of approving a traditional infrastructure road build project the way that it is. We also have a plan to separate sewer and stormwater management here in Metro Detroit. Those are one system, and that is disgusting when it backs up in your basement. It is something that Grand Rapids invested in many, many years ago, and it is expensive. It's expensive to separate those systems, but I'm encouraged to see the new acting director of the Great Lakes Water Authority had a press conference a few weeks ago and said, this is something, it's non-negotiable. We have to do this. It's not an if or how much. It's going to cost anywhere from $5 to $20 billion. But really, I think what we're seeing is the cost of not doing it is far greater now. So we all understand that this is an issue. We've got to work together. We've got to come up with a solution, because otherwise, if we don't, all of the residents are bearing that cost of losing things in your basement, of not being able to get to work, of losing your car in the water. And it's not fair, and it's not okay. So more to come. We've been working really, really hard on that package. And I hope when we introduce it, we can get some bipartisan support, because this is happening everywhere. You look at Midland, you look up north with people losing their homes just into the water because of raising water levels. So we've got to do it, and we've got to do it head on.
All right, next question is from Joshua from Berkeley. They also emailed us this question as well. Why is MDHHS now combining school-related outbreak cases with cluster cases in their weekly reporting? Up until last week, MDHHS was only reporting school-related outbreak cases and wants to know if there is a reason between the distinction and report between outbreaks and cluster cases.
Hey, Joshua, that is a great question. And we know there was some reporting done, a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about this in last coffee hour. Oakland County had no COVID outbreaks throughout the school system, which was fantastic. But then we saw, in Macomb, there were a lot of outbreaks. But then there was the question of, is that the reality, or is there inconsistency in reporting? So we've identified that. We got your question. We're flagging it with MDHHS, because I know, especially for parents right now, and school administrators and kids, it's just for planning purposes, right? What do we consider an outbreak, a cluster, a case? What does that mean for the school if you have to stay home, if there's quarantine involved? So, I know there's some frustration right now with some of the inconsistency and changing in reporting. And this is something we've seen kind of throughout the pandemic too. We are a decentralized system for a lot of things. So a lot of county health departments, for those that do have health departments, have different reporting structures and school systems. So we flagged it and we will send that on to MDHHS as well.
All right, next question is from Frank from Royal Oak. They ask, current and former executives of DTE currently head 501c4 nonprofits that are lobbying Michigan utility regulatory agencies to lower the wholesale price paid to residents who have solar panels and who participate in net metering programs. While these agencies have authority to address this issue, is there anything that can or is being done by the legislature to ensure that people are being fairly compensated?
Frank, I love this question. I love it so much. We had a bill up last term, and a term in the legislature is 2 years. So even though I'm in office for 4 years, when I say last term, it was a couple of years ago. But there was a bill in the legislature to lift the residential solar cap. Michigan right now has a 1% cap on residential solar. So that's all of the residential energy can be generated. 1% of the total energy for residential buildings is 1% via rooftop solar. And that's kind of divvied up by service area. So for consumers in the Upper Peninsula, they blew past that cap already. The Upper Peninsula has some of the highest energy costs in the state. And so you can imagine a lot of residents up there invested in rooftop solar. They want to be able to generate their own energy. But the physics of energy, until we have more reliable and available battery storage systems that you could install in your home, that energy has to go somewhere. So if you generate more energy than you're using in your home, it goes back out onto the grid. And that is what is called distributed generation, where the total generation, the amount of energy generated is distributed. So it's not just one, let's say, coal plant, although those are being retired. It's potentially that centralized system, but also rooftop solar. And that's kind of contributing to the total amount of energy that is on the grid. That is a debate that we are taking up now in the Senate Energy and Tech Committee. The bill that I mentioned would lift the solar cap, and that had bipartisan support last term. I think eliminating it. It was actually introduced by Senator Ed McBroom of the Upper Peninsula and Senator Jeff Irwin of Ann Arbor. And we had the votes for it, but it did not pass out of committee, which was really frustrating. So we're continuing to work on it. The MPSC had put together a study, a report, not necessarily giving us the answer that we were kind of looking for on the right way to structure this, but laying out some different generation funding models, payment structures that we could consider. So it's ongoing. I hear you. I hear that is a frustration for anybody who's investing in rooftop solar, that you want to be compensated, not only for the energy you're generating for yourself, but if you are returning energy out to the grid, and how do we balance that with the cost and maintenance of the grid itself, which is owned and operated in our area by DTE. So we're working on it, but I hear you, and it is ongoing, and we will be, I'm sure, working on it in Senate Energy and Tech through next year.
All right, and then the next question is from Mark on Facebook. They mentioned House Bill 5130, but I think that was a typo. I think the actual bill is 5190. This is a bill that would add a half credit personal finance requirement and reduce the foreign language requirement from 2 credits to 1.5 credits in the Michigan Merit Curriculum. It's been introduced in the House. I wanted to know if you had a feeling on it if it does get to the Senate.
It's the first time, if I'm very honest, the first time hearing of the bill. So we have not had that over in the Senate yet. And I don't know if it has legs. I think a similar bill has been introduced previously. And my understanding is it has not moved forward. So kind of to put this into context, there are thousands of bills that are introduced and moved every year. So while I would love to say I know every single bill and what it does when it's introduced, we typically have to wait until it comes over to our chamber. A lot of times bills are dead on arrival. They're introduced, they might be referred to a committee, they may never get a hearing. So we are focused on, the issues that are before us and in my committee, but we will certainly flag it and keep a lookout for it and see if it is moving in the House and coming over to our chamber. And in that case, we'll do what our process always is, which is checking in with residents, checking in with stakeholders, leaning on some of my other colleagues who serve on education policy committees and going from there.
All right. The next question is from Ryan on Facebook. He has two questions. The first is if you have any update on the status with Danny Fenster.
Hey, Ryan, happy almost Halloween. And again, thank you always for being the person who refuses to let this go, because that's what we need, right? So the last news update that I saw was that Danny Fenster, for those who may not know, is a journalist from here, from Berkeley and Huntington Woods, who was living and working in Myanmar, was arrested and has been sitting in jail, has been charged with a number of crimes. And the situation in Myanmar right now is there was a military coup that overthrew the government and are now arresting journalists and charging them with crimes, holding them even without crimes. And we don't know anything further at this point. I have heard reports that he is in, as good of health as possible. Really, Ryan, whatever you're seeing in the news is what I'm seeing. And I think I've mentioned this before, but for those who may not know, as a state level elected official, there's a lot, particularly when it comes to foreign affairs and relations that I don't know and can't know. But we continue to work with Senator Peter's office. We have a regular check-in with his staff and team, and Congressman Levin's office, who's been really vocal on this issue. But fundamentally, journalism is not a crime. And this is a key tenet of our values and beliefs as Americans. And I know the State Department is continuing to try to work towards his release, but we will keep pushing for it. But the best thing we can do, as always, is to continue to talk about it, promote it, because the more that there's an outcry from Americans, from the public, it gives the State Department more kind of muscle to be able to negotiate with, I would say a foreign government, but this is really a foreign military. So it's a tough negotiation, and I wish I had better news.
He has a second question, and it is go blue or go green.
Ooh, okay. So I did not go to either college, but I did marry a Spartan. So I think that was in my ketubah. It's a Jewish marriage contract, and we got married that I am now a Spartan by marriage. So go green.
Go green. Yeah, my father, if I said go blue, might take his name off my birth certificate. So I'll also add a go green. And then Marianne on Facebook, I believe this was in regards to you addressing the tampon tax issue, wants to know when kind of the timeline of the tampon tax and maybe when we'll actually see it in our stores in the future.
Well, like anything, this is a bill that's been worked on for 8 years. So once the governor signs it, then depending on whether or not, this is wonky, if the bill was voted out with immediate effect or not, impacts kind of when it goes into law in statute. So once we know more, once the bill is signed, we will report out on the details, what it does, when it goes into effect, and when we might be able to see it. And I want to shout out a group of student activists in our district. I won't go into too much detail, but who are pushing for free menstrual products to be available in bathrooms in schools, which is awesome. And I'm excited that they're doing that, because that's true. There are particularly younger girls who are lower income who miss class, miss school, don't go because they don't have access to menstrual products. So more to come, and we will report out the timing when we know more.
Brandon on Facebook asks a very important question. What kind of candy is being passed out at your household this weekend?
We always want to be the good full-size candy bar household, just Absolutely. On the record. And we were, it's a little tough. I used to live, for those who are kind of in the southern part of our district, I used to live right behind Trader Joe's on Woodward. And that was like the best Halloween, like people would drop their kids off. We had hours and hours and hours of kids trick-or-treating at our house, and we ran out of candy the first year, and we're like, oh my gosh, we got to be prepared for next time. So not as much traffic where we are living now, but we have full-size Reese's and Hershey's bars. And listen, if kids don't take them, somebody's going to have to eat them. So I will have to eat them.
Or, bring them into the office. I
Yeah,
also enjoy. All right. Well, that was our last question, but Sharon on YouTube wanted us to remind people about local elections on Tuesday.
Yes, local elections are coming. There are elections. Make sure you vote in every election that you have an option to vote in. We have local elections throughout most, if not all, of the communities that we represent. So if you've got an absentee ballot, make sure you are turning it in. At this point, make sure you're turning it in via Dropbox or at your clerk's office. Otherwise, schedule out some time for you to get out to the polls on election day and go vote and tell your neighbors to vote, because we see, really low turnout in municipal elections. And that is even more than what we do at the state level. I mean, this is literally your neighbors, your street, what is happening in your communities. So get out, go vote.
All right. Well, that's all the questions we have.
Liz, Halloween plans?
Well, I live in East Lansing, and tomorrow is the Michigan versus Michigan State game. So trying to avoid all the traffic.
On a Halloween weekend. Woo!
A little scary. But then, yeah, I'm going to go Sunday night to go celebrate Halloween with my nephew, my little 3-year-old guy.
Well, fun. Anybody watching, if you have very cute Halloween pictures you want to send us that you want us to share in a future coffee hour, please do. We love them.
Absolutely.
I will certainly share some pictures of Noah, the Stay Puft Marshmallow, because it's going to be cute and hilarious. All right, everybody. Happy Halloween, and we will see you next time.